and welcome to our webinar brought to you by goVirtualOffice. We are going to dive into AI, compliance, and ERP. Today's program is all about getting your data house in order, which is such a critical foundation and a great topic to kick off any planning that you're doing for AI and ERP work. So welcome. My name is Liz Brigson, and I'm happy, very pleased to welcome you today to the program, and we hope that you will spend this hour, focus in on the topic and really absorb it, and we hope to make the program interactive for you. So if you want to go ahead to the GoToWebinar questions box, that's how we'll interact with the program today. You can say hi, let us know where you're joining from. Steven says, Steve, Thong from New Jersey. That's great. Welcome to Amy, Miriam, Julie, Matthew. Great to have you all here. Thank you for saying hi. Max is joining from Michigan, Mark from North Carolina. So welcome everyone. And please continue to ask your questions, share your feedback. Dason's enthusiastically joining from Boston. So love to see the exclamation points and the enthusiasm here today. Today's program, of course, qualifies for CPE credit. You can access your CPE certificate from your in-course dashboard. That becomes available to you in 1 hour. We talked about questions. If you would like the presentation slides, I always encourage you to save them, reference them. You can download them from GoToWebinar or access them from your in-course dashboard after the program. So we'll have 4 polling questions. You'll want to respond to at least 3 of the polling questions, and you'll be able to qualify for CPE credit. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us at support@incoursa.com. And if you're on LinkedIn, I would highly recommend connecting with our speakers, our sponsors, and I'd love to connect with you as well. I think LinkedIn is a great place to build your professional network. As I mentioned, today's program is brought to you by goVirtualOffice. We really appreciate our longstanding partnership with goVirtualOffice. They are an excellent company who's dedicated to helping organizations leverage technology tools. And we have Sean Brown with us today, who's a senior ERP implementation manager. And Sean, as you'll see today, he has a really strong background in finance and in coding, which is amazing. It's just being able to translate that and helping to find the right software solutions for organizations. So Sean, really looking forward to hearing from you today. And Sean is joined by Brian Bolger. Brian is the Director of Transformation with the Eliason Group, and he has close to 20 years of experience with delivering solutions to his clients. And so that covers everything from implementing best practices in accounting, finance, across all of the different business processes for accounting, as well as procurement, and then some mergers and acquisitions, HR, experience in addition to the ERP. So you are all in great hands today with Sean and Brian. Really looking forward to diving into the content today. So Sean, Brian, hello and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Perfect. I think, Liz, we're going to start the conversation out today with our first poll question.
Wonderful. So we have a polling question for all of you in the audience. Would love to hear from you. Which of the following best represents how your organization conducts business? So are you in the manufacturing space, wholesale distribution, retail to include e-commerce, of course, business services, or other? We only can include 5 options, so we realize that there's probably a big group of you who are not in the first 4. So feel free to write in and let us know what industry or how your organization conducts business. So Carlos writing in healthcare. Max, very interesting, a temperature-controlled REIT. Fascinating. Jonelle is in the education space. Wonderful. Okay, Matthew, construction. David, government. Carolina, banking. Amy, healthcare. Kyle, credit union banking. Chris, airport. Wow. Ibrahim, software. Great mix here. I'll close the poll and you can all see how we're represented here. So manufacturing, business services, some wholesale, some retail, a lot of other, and thank you all for writing in and letting us know what other means for your company. So we've closed the poll and we're back to the slides.
Wonderful. Thank you, Liz. And um, I will kick us off today with a little statistic as we dive into the topic of AI and compliance. A McKinsey study found in 2025, 88% of organizations use AI in at least one of their functions. And what we want to discuss here today is how best to use AI and what parameters organizations should put in place to make sure that not only are they leveraging AI correctly, but they are fitting with various rules, regulations, and compliance needs as well. So moving to the first topic here, where does AI sit and how do organizations use it? The first chevron here that is in blue, AI is increasingly embedded in business workflows. A lot of organizations are seeing this in the systems that they use on a daily basis. I'll refer to an ERP since that is our shared topic for today. However, a lot of our various systems that clients use, CRMs, ERPs, EPMs, those type of systems are baking in AI in order to enhance their product offering. So a lot of organizations, whether they realize it or not, they are using AI in some capacity today. What I think is a topic that we should all address when it comes to AI is what data and what parameters we would like our organizations to use AI in. And what I mean by that is, do I want my data into an AI tool that I do not have control of where that goes after I set that up or I put the data in there? Are there various different parameters of the types of output that we want? Do we configure the language model to give us certain results? Those type of questions, by putting various compliance and risk guardrails around those parameters, it really does help an organization leverage the tool appropriately, as well as enabling their people to use the tooling. And then we'll get to the ERP as a backbone of the organization. I do believe that is a understatement here. Sean will elaborate a little bit more, but especially from a finance and accounting perspective, having your ERP in a solid place, quality data, appropriate workflows, etc., really does help operationalize the business and scale at a more efficient pace. And then once you embed AI functionality into there, you can really do some really forward-thinking activity. Okay. Moving to why AI requires structure and oversight. I'll start before I get to some of the points on the slide. I'll start with an example here. I recently, in the second half of last year, had a client. They purchased the licensing version of ChatGPT for their team members to use, and just kind of allowing the organization to be a little bit more forward thinking. And though it was an unintentional act, one of their team members from the finance organization put their quarterly financials into this widget to kind of get some insights to provide to their superior, who was then going to have to be on a quarterly call and share their financials with their shareholders. What they did not particularly realize at the inception of launching this tool was that data went to a public cloud. So essentially, they unintentionally released their quarterly financials about 6 days early. And they were able to backtrack on that. There was no harm done with that event. However, they did not have any governance in place that allowed or informed their team members of what they could or could not do when it comes to leveraging the tool. So they had to pull back the ability to leverage the tool, and then they were able to put in some guardrails, and now the team is able to use the tool with a set of parameters in place that make it focused on the organization's needs, as well as enabling their team members to really leverage the tool for other functions within the business. One of the things that you also have to consider is having your data in a quality spot before it even gets into any AI tool. Again, setting some sort of governance structure in place. Again, what your team members can leverage AI for, how they could do it, what they cannot do, I think is probably equally as important. And then training your team members on getting the best outputs from the various tools really kind of enables the organization overall to scale with future forward-thinking technology. So that brings us to our second poll question, Liz. I think this is probably relevant, and many organizations find this question a little surprising. How many systems do you currently operate with as a business? So, Liz, I'll pause and send it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. So great question here. Interested to hear from our audience today. How many systems are you currently using to operate your business? So 1 to 3, 4 to 6, or 7 or more. And Brian, what kind of systems are we thinking about here? So we're thinking about maybe an accounting system, an ERP, like you mentioned, the CRM. We're seeing almost half of the audience is reporting 7 plus. So we're probably also like expanding this to think like email systems, maybe like internal communication systems. There's probably a whole laundry list. Let's go ahead and close the poll though. And how does this hit you? Is this pretty representative of the companies that you are working with?
It is, and I think one of the types of systems that are overlooked quite frequently. A lot of the team members within the organization, they know they have a CRM that they have to log activity in. The finance and accounting team, they use the ERP system. Your FP&A team, they may have another tool in place. But to get the data from your CRM to your FP&A system, that may involve another 2 or 3 interfaces as well, whether they have a middleware software or a custom configuration. And that's just the finance function. We also have we have to pay our people. So you have a payroll system. Is your payroll system and the HR system under one platform? That could be 1 or 2 options there. Do you have a time and expense system? So I think it's understanding the full landscape of your what you have in place from a system perspective, Liz. And I think more importantly, and this goes back to data, is how do your systems talk to one another? Are you setting up a proper middleware platform that, hey, every time you submit payroll, does that data then flow into your ERP so that your accounting team can do the appropriate bookings, for example? A lot of organizations that I work with, that tends to be an extremely manual effort where they have to download something from the payroll system, they upload it into the ERP, and then you have to go through a checks and balances exercise to validate that the data is correct, and then submit your the various journal entries around that.
Yes, there must be a better way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. Sorry, moving forward here. So what is AI governance? So I kind of alluded to this a little bit. I would say a simplistic way to put this into perspective is AI governance is putting guardrails around what your organization does with AI. Everything from how the team leverages various AI platforms, what data can or cannot go in there, and then will that findings from the AI results be shared with stakeholders? Those type of questions really kind of bake into an overall plan for the organization to leverage AI. It also comes with some ethical and regulatory situations, depending on the type of organization you are. I'll give a peer example here. We have a client who is working for a hospital. The hospital, point blank at this point in time, said there is no AI functionality that they will allow within the organization because they have to work around HIPAA laws and other Medicare restrictions. So they just said, until we know more, we are not going to leverage AI because it's just too much of a hassle to understand what we can or cannot do at this time. And then I think where it really kind of bubbles up here is if organizations do the legwork at the front end of the conversation with their team members or various stakeholders, it allows you to be proactive in how the organization can leverage AI, and it mitigates any reactions to potential issues in the future. So I think it's all about being proactive, understanding what you can or cannot do, maintaining your regulatory requirements, and then building out a business case for why you would need to use AI and how it solves that problem. All right. And so we have some key components here of AI, but I will hand it over to Sean to take the slide on from here. Sean, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. So Brian alluded to and talked about kind of the components to AI governance and the importance of understanding what that AI you guys are looking to do will do for you. Here we have a couple things outlined, and the reason for it is you don't know what you don't know, and identifying some of those key components might assist with understanding how it'll be used, where it will be used, and what will be used in that AI integration. For instance, for AI readiness, policies, designing policies that the organization can lean into and understand why AI is being used, what it's going to be used for, and how to govern it is going to be a big piece of it. And then designing those governance frameworks. The governance framework is going to identify permission sets and how users interact with that AI interaction so that there's security in the data and security in how it's being leveraged within the organization. Same thing with workforce readiness. Is the team ready to dive into AI? Are they at that point where systems are ready, they're ready, they can start leaning into some of that AI? And then you're going into technology risk assessment, identifying the data and privacy controls and making sure that the data that is being accessed is supposed to be accessed by those specific agents or specific individuals that are leveraging the reporting tool to create the AI tool to create reporting, or leveraging it for workflows, the works. The last component to technology risk, I know Brian had kind of talked about, when we looked at the polling of how many different systems are being used across the board, understanding third-party risk assessment, right? There might be other individuals, a middleware that is integrated with your systems to connect your payroll to your accounting software or connect your CRM to your ERP system. Really honing in and understanding what those third-party options are and what those third-party elements are and what the risks come with it can be. The biggest thing in regards to AI governance as it relates to data, though, is going to be data governance. What we have seen in a lot of implementations that we have done at GVO is data. Good data gives good results. Bad data makes it very challenging to leverage AI tools, regardless of what policies you have in place and what frameworks and guardrails you have put up. If the data is mediocre, you're not going to get the most bang for your buck. So ensuring that the data quality, preparing for that data element, and making sure that everything is structured in a way that will really hone in and maximize the use of that data in the right ways is going to be really important. And then as you go through everything, case monitoring. The buck doesn't stop when everything is implemented. There's going to be a lot of different elements that play into it as you guys continue the adventure through the AI world, and monitoring how things are being used and ensuring that nothing has changed, ensuring that everything is still structured correctly as the business change, as the data changes, and as the organization changes, and making sure that all of those are identified. All right. How does this play into ERPs? So ERP systems within the environment normally house your centralized data. Where we see some of these challenges is when there are multiple systems that are operating independently of each other, and there's no centralized area. With that not being centralized and data not being all in one environment, makes it very challenging to leverage AI tools in its entirety, because it has to go and find data, or there might be incomplete data elements. So centralizing that data and standardizing your processes is going to be very important in the short term. Then once you get through that data element and understanding what you guys are looking to accomplish, how that data is going to be extracted, and what the AI agents are going to use it for, defining roles and permissions to ensure that the accountability element of all of this is accounted for, right? You want to make sure that if there's financials that are being generated and someone goes in there and wants to generate a report on financials, that the right people are seeing it. So structuring user roles and permissions appropriately is going to be a very large factor in governance and ensuring that the right eyes are on the right pieces. Then coming down to the audit and traceability elements. Within an ERP system, there might be an audit trail that you're able to identify and ensure that each piece that's being kind of accounted for in each generated report or update to data is being accounted for, so that you can go back and audit that based on those specific principles of really honing into some of that monitoring, right? Then setting the foundation for monitoring and reporting. After all of this is compiled, everything is put together, you have centralized data, you have those defined roles and permissions, you have your traceability elements in play, then you can start really honing in on the monitoring side of things because everything is active. Get those reports out of the system that you guys are looking to generate, get a little bit more insight into the business so that you have a little bit more visibility as to how the company is operating or the different elements within the company are producing. That foundation for monitoring and reporting becomes the last big piece of your ERP system after all the other pieces are in play. All right, so as it relates to the life cycle, the biggest thing that you guys are probably wondering is, how do we apply this? How do we use this to our advantage? How do we get this kind of in play? The first one is going to be the discover phase, is going in and identifying those opportunities, understanding what might work and how you guys want to leverage AI to really maximize the output of what you guys are looking to accomplish, leveraging those AI agents or leveraging that AI tool to ensure that you guys are getting the reporting or the optimization that you're looking for, along with the stakeholders that are going to be kind of owning those processes. Once those are identified, then you could go into a design phase. This is where a lot of the fun kind of plays into it, because now you get to design out what that's going to look like, how it's going to interact with your environment or environments, and what that's going to really hone in on for efficiency gains or optimization elements. That could be anything from designing workflows, looking at the data sources and ensuring the right data sources are being pulled from, and what those tools are going to be used for and how they're going to be used within those specific workflows for those data sources. Once all of the design phase is then completed, go into the build and deploy, right? You're going to go in and you're going to start building out all the different AI tools, everything that's going to be used on those day-to-day bases, and then validate via testing and validation processes. Once all of that has been completed and you've gone through some user testing, you've validated that the workflows are working correctly, you've identified what those opportunities are to really hone in on what you guys are trying to accomplish within the AI space, then you integrate those into your environments and drive into the governance and monitoring to make sure that, again, right people are seeing the right things. A lot of good use cases in this scenario. There are certain areas in which you can use this to your advantage. So if we look at certain areas such as finance and accounting or reporting and decision making, there are areas where, hey, we want to create a management reporting package. One of my clients, very, very heavy in regards to wanting to have a quarterly management reporting package. That reporting package allows for you to go ahead and generate the financials, be able to see everything that the stakeholders are looking to look at on a quarterly basis. Through AI, you could have certain guardrails put up, monitoring elements, roles, permissions structured, the data in the system to be able to generate a reporting package very seamlessly, really hone into being able to generate that specific reporting package without much work or much effort to go and generate that. Same thing with like operations and supply chain. There are elements in regards to operations and supply chain that can really hone in on it. Demand and supply forecasting. Think about the opportunities there in regards to AI. I know through implementations that I've done with my team that demand planning normally is a little complicated. There's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts, a lot of things that people look into and they don't understand, or it's trying to understand from what the old system was to what the new system is. Leveraging AI to really hone in on how you can maximize the best out of the demand planning and supply planning modules really hones in with AI as you start building everything out. So workflows to really hone in on, hey, when do I need to order these things? Or what is coming in the door that I need to account for in inventory? Those can be very large scenarios, especially with an ERP landscape, right? Reporting and decision making as well. So there's going to be reporting elements that you can dive into with language barriers. There might be scenarios where reporting, you guys might be operating multinationally and you need some assistance with translation. There might be an opportunity to leverage AI to then translate certain documents into a different language. You might be operating over in the Asia. You might be operating over in Africa. You might be operating in Europe. That might have some terminology changes or some language barriers that this can assist with as you go through and you do those specific AI compliance elements. The other thing is you have the ability to set risk and policy controls. AI can be leveraged to hone in on what your risk or your policies are. Oversee everything. Go in there and look at the policies and find faults. Go in there and see if there's anything that we need to update, if it's outdated. Is this document created back in 2022 and it's now stale? We need to go through and update it. AI can help with identifying what those documents are and how they can be leveraged across the board, right? So there's a lot of different scenarios in which we can leverage AI and different use cases. Again, with a finance background, I am very, very, very in tune with the finance side of things. One of the big ones that I know that has been discussed is closing processes for AI generation and optimizing that close process to take it from a 15-day close process to maybe like a 5-day close process. There is opportunities that have been discussed across the board with some of my clients that, hey, we might be able to leverage AI to really help narrow down that close process and keep the ball moving instead of spending 10 extra days going through that closing process. So there's a lot of different plays and a lot of different scenarios in which this can be leveraged across multiple industries. Just a couple off the top of my head are those the ones we kind of called out. And it really just depends on what you guys are looking for and more so imagination. And then once that's kind of in play, you could go ahead and start putting governance in play and roles and permissions and really honing in on how you want the data to be seen, who should see it, and how it needs to be displayed. All right. Now we kind of went through this one a little bit. So now up next is going to be, so if you want to go one more, Brian, we got another polling question, Liz. So if you could go ahead, we'll get the polling question up for poll question 3.
That sounds great. So here we are, our third polling question. Does your team currently have access to real-time data and reporting through an ERP system? So interested to know from our group today, are you happy with your ERP system? Are you considering other options? Is this something that is a priority for you to transition to a new ERP system, or is this not something that you see a benefit in for your organization? So I imagine, Sean and Brian, you've probably talked with organizations across the spectrum here, but likely you're getting involved with those companies who are considering a transition or considering other options. And what type of access to real-time data are you seeing for the companies who are looking to implement an ERP system? Is there any real-time access to data before the ERP system is implemented?
Yeah, so I could speak to this as we're kind of going through a few of these scenarios currently. One of the big things we're seeing is that real-time data, there might be some access to certain data points, but because systems are dispersed across multiple different products, it makes it very challenging to get the data in a consolidated effort to really hone in on what it is. The real-time data element seems to be kind of a play in some areas where people are coming off of systems that you have to wait for a few days for things to post, or you need to wait for a certain team to generate reporting, whereas these more intuitive ERP systems are really honing in on leveraging real-time data, leveraging AI to generate that real-time data. But right now we're seeing it kind of across the board, where we're seeing a little bit of both at this point.
Okay, yes, interesting to know. I think what you're saying is the context, that there's
Yep.
data points that might be available, but it's not really decision-making quality information until it can be analyzed side by side with the other like key metrics and indicators and results from the company. So it looks like, I'll close that poll and share the results. We have a group, a really core group who's satisfied with the current ERP system, but also a couple really sizable groups with us who are considering options or getting ready to make that transition.
Yeah, and Sean, I'll just jump in. I had a real-time conversation this morning. One of our clients, they're looking to begin the journey of moving to a new ERP for a couple of reasons. The first being their platform's no longer going to be supported in a year and a half. So it's almost their hands being forced. The second
Yep.
thing, it kind of goes back to the data conversation, is it's an on-prem system. So the ability to get real-time data consists of a team of 3 people every day extracting it, putting it into Excel, doing some manual maneuvering to then report out to the leadership team. So you can say it's real time, but it's stagnant by 24 hours at any given moment. And that, coupled with the fact that that system's going to be sunset in the near future, that's kind of spurring their interest in the new ERP journey.
Yeah, and I will second that, Brian, because I know a lot of the companies that we implement and work through an ERP implementation with, 90% of them are, hey, we do all the reporting in Excel. And real
Yes.
time, not necessarily real time. You're consolidating things down, you're putting them into an Excel format that then displays the output you're looking for. Whereas 10% maybe are using some form of it, but that those systems they're moving from are becoming sunset and they're no longer going to be relevant in the coming years. So I good call out on that one.
Yeah.
All right. So governance throughout the life cycle. So the biggest thing that when we have started talking about AI with clients of ours, they have said, well, we get the governance in play and we get the permissions set up and then we're good. Not necessarily, right? Governance is going to be kind of an ongoing thing. And the reason for that is that you get in, you set up the governance, things may change, permissions, rules may change. You want to make sure that you're accounting for it on a regular basis to ensure that nothing has changed and the right people are seeing the right things, right? So governance doesn't apply to just the first process and getting it structured. It's an ongoing step, right? You get through the performance of it all, getting it put together. And then as you're going through and you're using AI, just validating it. Again, those use cases, case management, understanding how it's being used and the output that's coming out. Same thing with after deployment. You want to make sure that after you deploy everything that's out in the work streams and the various data elements that you guys are using AI for, that you're continuing to monitor it and ensure that governance is still relevant as you go through, leveraging those monitoring and controls. Those monitoring controls is going to be the biggest part of all of this to make sure that as things are being generated, that there's no concerns around the validity of the data and or the audience of the data, right? ERP systems do help sustain that consistency though. So with some of the implementations that we have done on our side, leveraging those user roles, leveraging those specific permission sets, and ensuring that those are structured correctly can be the first line of defense, right? With the governance, ensuring that the permissions are structured correctly, ensuring that there's a lot of right eyes, right permissions, right structuring, and that leans into the governance, and then allowing for monitoring, because you, outside of just the permissions that you set up for the people that may be using it, there's going to be permissions for the people that are going to be monitoring it, right? And ensuring that all of that is structured correctly will then really hone in on how you guys view it, how you monitor it, how you validate it, how you deploy it, and how you use it moving forward. All right. So there are a lot of questions that we're getting. Some of the more commonly asked questions you could see here kind of displayed on the screen. How do we experiment responsibly? How do we maintain visibility and control? How do we align? How do we own? All of these things are very common questions outside of a whole bunch of extra questions that we have on a regular basis with some of the clients we work with and some of the individuals that we connect with. Experimenting responsibly, really honing in on governance, really honing in on defining what you guys want that specific agent to do and understanding what the output should be, and then doing some testing, making sure that permissions are structured, making sure that you guys are testing in a scenario that makes sense. Again, going back to an example that Brian kind of called out earlier, you don't want to load a full set of financials to an AI agent without understanding where it's going to load it to, how it's going to be used, and where it's going to be visible. Because the last thing you want to do is release financial statements 6 days before that quarterly window and have things get out in the air before you're ready for them, right? So really honing in on what those cases are going to be, all the different cases that you're going to be testing. So testing scenarios and permission sets and really honing in on how that will work is going to be very fundamental in regards to experimenting responsibly. I know we have a specific stringent process in regards to how we leverage AI, and on our side for GVO, we have a team that goes in, they deploy it, they go and test it, they validate it before anyone else gets to see it to ensure that There's no security compromises, there's no visibility issues, there's no issues across the board in regards to what is being released and how we're going to be using it. So experimenting responsibly is definitely one of the top questions that a lot of organizations are asking, and rightfully so, right? Maintaining visibility and control, then same concept, making sure that you have the right parameters in place to ensure that you're monitoring things correctly, that you're validating things correctly, and it's an ongoing review of how those specific AI agents or specific AI tools are operating within your landscape, right? If you're in there, there's probably a frequent process that you guys revisit, saying, hey, we're going to go in and we're going to review it, making sure permissions are structured correctly, the right people have those permissions assigned to them so that they can go in there and do the job of monitoring and controlling those specific processes to really hone in on how it's going to work and ensuring that there is visibility across the board for the long term. Then with those specific AI agents, how do you align them within existing systems, right? A lot of ERP spaces are starting to dive into tools of their own or leverage certain things, but there are a bunch of tools out there that can be leveraged, right? There's things that I'm sure people are familiar with, ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude, or a lot of those AI tools that can be leveraged. What I would recommend is if you guys are using an existing system, ask the question. There's probably some integration or some form of a connection that can be made with some of those AI tools if they're not naturally involved in that specific ERP space. Those may have already been tested. They may have been validated by whoever the ERP company is, whoever is going to be using those, right? So really looking at those and then designing how you want it to be used within your environment so that you have the right tools in place when you start using those. You want to be able to test it. You want to be able to validate it before you release it to everyone in the organization to start leveraging. And once they start using it, user adoption, they're going to start liking it, right? And then for decision making, so a lot of the decisions made for AI support and such, normally we see that honed in with maybe an IT director or someone that's really in tune with how technology works, right? The biggest thing I'll call out is like for our organization, our CTO is the one that owns it, right? He knows all the ins and outs, he does all the testing, he validates everything. That in that scenario might be applicable, but there might be other individuals that might own some of the decision making that needs to take place, right? There might be a scenario where you guys are dropping in an AI agent for finance, and finance, there might be a person in the CFO role or controller role that needs to have oversight on it to make sure that the right data points are being displayed. So it's really contingent on a case-by-case basis on who's going to be using it, what the purpose of that's for, and maybe a collaboration between multiple individuals that really hone in on testing and validating what that's going to do and how it's going to function within the environment. All right. We are at polling question number 4. So Liz, I think this is our final one. You want to go ahead and cue this one up?
Yes, we'll go ahead and launch the 4th polling question. When do you plan on replacing your technology? So for those of you in the audience who are considering a new ERP system or in that process of evaluating, is that something that you're planning to make that upgrade this year, next year, or perhaps 2 to 3 years out, maybe over a 4+ year period? That's a long runway, or maybe you don't have any plans to upgrade or replace, but just interested to know for those of you who are about to embark on your journey, what your timeline is. And of course, this is different for everyone. Technology is changing so quickly, and for those who have been, and I guess a great question for you, Brian, is for the companies that you are working with, when they're getting ready to replace their technology, let's say for the companies who say this is a priority for us over the next 12 months, so a pretty near-term priority, how long have those organizations been on their current ERP, or how long have they been using their current accounting system?
I would say that the range, it's a wide range there. However, it's one of two, I would say, events that tend to happen. It's, hey, they're being forced off a legacy system, or they had a critical event. They either were acquired, they acquired another organization, they're getting ready for an IPO, that type of scenario, and they're trying to get the finance function in a better place because of that.
Okay, so there's been an inflection point. Something has kind of something, and there's a new fact pattern for that company. Either the ERP is not relevant anymore, or something within the organization has changed. And I can relate to that. I was on a team, a middle market technology company, and that company did a lot of service, but also sold a lot of hardware. And for that team, I was there right as they were completing their evaluation and getting ready to adopt NetSuite. But the inflection point for that team was needing more capabilities when it came to inventory management.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, Liz. And another thing that at Eliason we help clients with, and this really, it can be system agnostic, but I'll stick with the ERP theme, is we call it helping get the organization ready through phase 0 activities, getting your data in a proper spot, understanding what data you want to migrate to your new system, defining your business requirements. You don't want to go from your current process today to the same process in a new system. So updating your processes, what team member activities are going to look like, establishing a change protocol, getting all of those activities in place prior to launching into and replacing any technology really helps lay a better foundation as they go into that event.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm thinking back to writing a message also to an attendee. I'm thinking back to what we were going through and what we experienced. Those conversations take a long time because there's a lot, at least unguided, those conversations can take a long time because there's a lot of possibility, a lot of potential, a lot of what if, and that was even before AI. So I'm going to close the polling question, but when we get to the Q&A time, I want to probe a little further into, how having someone help guide those questions toward what works well, what has been successful, having someone in the room that can help the conversation move along. I think, just from my experience, that's helpful. Otherwise, it feels like the world of possibility.
Agreed.
So let's take a quick look. It looks like we do have many attendees who are, looking at an ERP, a new technology replacement, either this year or next year. So it's so important. This conversation around using AI, having that data warehouse, so important. So let's go ahead and cover those key takeaways, and then we'll get to our Q&A when we get to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've gone through a lot, and I know over the course of the last 45 minutes, we've talked through some heavy topics, right? With those, the key takeaways across the board is going to be compliance for AI and ERP, making sure that there's consistency across interconnected platforms, and really honing in on how that's going to work for your organization. Ensuring that there's governance and really honing in on how governance is going to work for what you guys are looking to deploy, how those AI agents are going to work, and what it's going to look like in the future state. And then understanding what the ERP is going to do as it provides structure and consistency for the data that's coming across, and how that's going to look, and the accountability across the board for it. Who's going to be in charge of it? Who's going to be monitoring it? Who's going to ensure that the data is correct? Who's going to make sure that the data is consistent? So that you get to really get the bang for your buck out of those tools that you guys are going to be developing, whether it be through AI or through those agents that can be created within the environment. And then really asking the right questions, right? We talked about a few questions here prior to that polling question. Asking the right questions and ensuring that you guys have a full understanding of how AI works and what the expectations are, and how to really effectively implement AI agents, AI tools, and AI landscape across your ERP tools or your various softwares is going to be important as you guys continue to grow and learn through the AI world. Brian, anything to add on that?
No, Sean, I think that's a good recap there, and I look forward to some questions here.
Yeah.
Excellent, great. So we'll open it up for Q&A. And so you talked about defining the future state, what's possible. And earlier, about midway through the program, you shared some use cases. So AI use cases in the ERP-centric organizations, and some around finance and accounting, operations and supply chain, reporting and decision support, and then the risk, compliance, and controls. So if we kind of hone in on finance and accounting, because I think that's a big group of our audience with us today, as you're working with teams to define the future state, how are you capturing, like, or how can a team capture the best practices and the best of what's possible, but in a way to make decisions and then keep the project moving? I think what I was trying to say earlier is that it's easy to get a finance team in a room and think like, I want this and I want that and I want it to work this way and I'd like it to do this for me. So what are the best ways to move those conversations along and feel confident in the decision, but then move on to the next part of the project so that you actually get the end result?
Yeah, and Sean, I'll take the first part of or I'll take the first stab at answering. Liz, I really think one of the ways that I've seen a lot of clients have a light bulb moment as to the areas where they can optimize their finance function is outlining the current state. We're all human, but I think once people see on a screen, on a page, the end-to-end activity, let's pick on the AP function. What does their AP team do on a day-to-day basis? And you chart that out, put it in a Visio, whatever it happens to be, and see that process broken down. That's really where you see glaring inefficiencies. And then from there, you can kind of build what you would like the future state to look like. And Sean and I did this for a client in the past where I'll reserve the details, but basically you looked at the end-to-end process and it's like, okay, you have a 14-step process when this should be 2 clicks of the mouse here. So it's really just laying it out, understanding what's going on, and then understanding what your new technology can do to help eliminate some of those steps along the way.
Yeah, that's a good call. And I to add on that, I know when we go through those processes, we do something similar. When Brian and I work together, we do that together. But I know there's going to be instances where we've done this for clients separately. And when we go through that process, very similar in nature, the thing we always like to talk about is a crawl, walk, run mentality, right? If you're going through and reviewing your processes, looking at the processes you currently have, let's find out how we can create those efficiencies. And while we're having those discussions, there's always, well, this would be really cool to have. Is that something you need now, or is it something you could build upon? Because this ERP is an investment, right? You guys are going to be working in it and leveraging it in a way that as you continue to grow, you can enhance it. One big component of that is enhancing it through AI, right? But having a crawl, walk, run mentality allows for you to ensure that the processes are streamlined to start coming into the new instance, and then build upon it as you continue to grow within that ERP landscape.
Do you find now, because there are so many iterations and upgrades to technology, that maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, there was more of a finite, like, we are implementing this program with this functionality, and maybe that made someone feel like you had to make all the decisions and then hit start? But can you comment on how development and deployment has changed? Like, you were able to define crawl, walk, run, where you can now build upon the technology and keep iterating. That's a big mindset shift to me.
Yeah. So I think there's an element of what it used to be that plays into it. What we have kind of walked through with a lot of clients is getting a foundation, right? Let's set the foundation. Let's get a good chart of accounts. Let's get the good processes in place. And there's always visions of grandeur. They want to be able to automate things and make things work more effectively and more efficiently. That's where development and some of those integrations really play into it. And maybe not first phase, but maybe in that walk phase where you say, okay, now you guys have gone into the ERP landscape. We've kind of did a mindset shift to not try and ram everything in all at once and do 7 integrations and 10 development pieces and baseline configuration. We got you up and running. Maybe we did the full configuration gambit, but we put in a couple development pieces to ease because this is how it needs to operate so that your team works efficiently in the first phase of all of this. And then we layer in those additional pieces. And normally when it's explained in a way that it allows for you guys to build automation, build efficiencies, build integrations, and really maximize, it really hones in and hits home with those individuals, because then things start clicking. They say, hey, that makes sense. We don't want to try and push everything in at once and try and make sure that every star aligns to make sure that everything works right in the implementation. Was taken in bite-sized chunks and was get it up and running and then enhance it. And an ERP shift is always a shift in general. So you have change management elements that play into it, and taking those smaller chunks makes it a little easier for both sides of the equation, our client, ourselves, to really understand, like, hey, we're going to train this team up, get them ready, and then layer in those additional pieces through development, through integrations, through additional configuration, or even training.
Absolutely. I love that. Such great advice there to set the foundation first, things like the chart of accounts, the processes, mapping them out, and then build from there. So when you're working together with a client that says, we're ready for this, we're ready to make the change, we don't want to do it alone, like, where do those discussions start? Where does your team come in? And what are the touch points that you have to walk through from that setting the foundation to going live with the first phase?
Yeah, so for our implementation process, typically what it is we're with you from the sales cycle all the way to go live. And we go through and we do a series of requirements gathering. We basically sit down with you, whether it be on site with you or we do it remote, because we're in a remote world now. We sit down and go through, okay, show us what your process is for your ordering process, or show us how you guys are doing sales, or show us how you're managing your inventory. And then what we do is we really focus in on, is it something you need right now? Is it something that's nice to have? Or is it something that, hey, it could be something down the road? And design out the processes and make sure that they have the right processes. Then as we go through the implementation, we're doing our standard configuration, training the teams up, getting them ready, and then holding hands along the side with them with go live and making sure that they're comfortable. There's always going to be a little uncomfortability in an ERP shift, right? It's a new change, it's new for everyone, but as comfortable as possible to make sure that as we go through, everything aligns to what we discussed and how we're going to be implementing that first phase, and then what the next phase is going to look like.
Thanks for overviewing that, Sean. We talk about, upskilling and, technology and AI. I think that one of the best ways for a finance and accounting professional to learn these skills is to work with someone like yourself, Sean, or someone like you, Brian, who you've done this, you've seen it, you're like the Sherpa, you're the guide. And what happens at the end when you get to that go live is not only has the organization upgraded in the systems and the software, but now you have a team that has a brand new budding and developing skill set that's really better positioned in the current technology landscape.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I think similar to what Sean said, in like the crawl, walk, run mentality, I think throughout an ERP implementation, it's really critical to not just drop training on folks. We have a client that they implemented NetSuite, and the first thing they did was have their team members. NetSuite has a great YouTube channel, and they just had their team members watch. There's like there are a series rather of 2-3 minute videos. And all they wanted them to do was get used to looking at the interface and understanding what their screens may look like, how the process works. And then they got into, okay, let's get more targeted with how we train folks. So it's easing the team into the training process there, but it's starting small to go big.
Yes, absolutely. And having a person who knows, I think, is a really great way to like build confidence and supplement with some of those training videos. So that's great. We have time for a couple more questions, so I encourage anyone in the audience to write in with questions. One story that you shared that really stuck in my mind was the story of the client who was using AI. It was approved by the organization, and then the way it was used ended up releasing the financials several days early. That's no fun for anyone. How can an organization, how can a finance leader ensure that the AI tools that they are using are truly private?
Yeah, I think it globally speaking, it you probably have to get your legal team involved to understand what your agreement with various vendors looks like. I think it all comes back to data, where data sits, who owns it, and are they able to use that data to build out further models. So it's just understanding what your agreement is with your various partners, and then training the team to understand what they can and cannot do. And that should be a top-down directive and governance model from the leadership team.
So definitely involve some other teams, have legal read through the fine print. It's something that, it's easy to get an account and just run head first into it. It sounds like the advice here is just take a little bit of time on the front end, make sure that you know what you're getting into, and set a policy for the team that's well communicated and well thought through.
Absolutely.
Another thing when it comes to like AI compliance, ERP is a theme that you acknowledged today, is just getting the data consistent so that you're getting the data outputs. When there's now an AI tool that's involved with providing financial data or helping with decision support, as that tool is going live, what are the types of reconciling activities that finance and accounting teams should be doing to validate and verify that the output of the AI model is truly the correct output?
As it relates to data, and use a control sample. The best way to phrase that, make sure that when you're generating those AI reports, if you say, hey, we want to create a reporting package, you have a means to be able to validate the data against this report that you know is accurate, right? That gives you the first level of confidence to make sure that everything is flowing through correctly. That goes into the testing phase of everything when it comes to the release of an AI agent or the release of the AI tools, making sure that you're doing validation and making sure that you're really honing in on test case scenarios so that you can validate that the output mirrors what it should. So you have confidence in the reporting moving forward, because if you don't have confidence in the reporting moving forward, it makes it very difficult to use those AI tools. But with data, really honing in on the data element as well. That's going to be the key factor in a lot of it. A lot of the implementations we see where data is in a good spot or it's cleaned up before it goes into the system, makes it a much smoother transition, much smoother interface, much smoother reporting elements, and that sets the foundation with the AI tools and validation that then also hones in on validating the data is accurate, because you know the data is accurate to start, so your reporting is going to be accurate to follow.
Yes. Okay, great point. So not only are we reconciling the outputs and using those test case scenarios, but you're highlighting the importance of validating the data on the input.
Yep.
The data going in. We have time for one more question. Good closing question here. Are there any common misconceptions that you'd like to address as it relates to using AI?
I think maybe a general statement. AI is not necessarily an enemy here. It is something that can improve the ways of working. So I think embracing how to leverage AI is a good mindset versus being trying to put it at arm's length.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. How about you, Sean?
I would agree with that. I would agree with his comment on that. The one thing I would call out is just validate. Make sure that everything that you're expecting comes out. Keep it at a short distance and really embrace it. But also make sure that it's reporting and it's giving you the output you're expecting.
Excellent. Very good. If anyone with us today would like to continue the conversation, what's the best way to get in touch with each of you?
Best way for me is going to be via email. Feel free to reach out with questions. I'm assuming Brian probably is similar in nature, but
Yes.
Feel free to reach out. I think my email is probably posted, or we can post it. So if you guys do have questions, my inbox is open.
Excellent. Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for this discussion. It's really clear that you have a lot of expertise. You've been in a lot of rooms with a lot of teams on these topics. And I definitely encourage those of our audience who are about to embark on a transformation journey, or maybe they're in that phase 2 or 3, to reach out, have a conversation. And I know that there's a lot that can be learned. We have launched all 4 of our polling questions. We're out of time, so our closing comments are just to remind you all that you can access the recording from your Corsa dashboard a little later today. The slides are uploaded for you, just with those really helpful overview and bullet points around considerations on these topics. When you close GoToWebinar, the course survey will pop up on your screen. We always appreciate your feedback. And Maria, I see your question about CPE certificates. In 1 hour, your CPE certificates, for those who qualified, they will populate straight to your Corsa dashboard. So you can go to the past webinars section or the CPE certificate section of your dashboard. You'll see this course and you'll see the associated CPE certificate. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Sean. Thanks, Brian. Thanks to your organizations for supporting the program today. Have a great afternoon and we'll look forward to having you back soon. Take care.
Thanks.
Talk soon. Thank you.